I've been playing a lot of Frontiers lately, frankly more than anyone should. I walked outside earlier, saw a tree, and thought about side-looping it, then quickly ran back inside, terrified of what I'd become. Welcome to my channel. Sonic's Birthday Bash is the second major DLC update to grace Sonic Frontiers, and with 2 simple additions, has taken everyone by storm. You may already know what I'm talking about, but before getting into that, let's start with the small stuff. Being released on Sonic's birthday, there are new cosmetic options that reskin a majority of game assets to be more festive for the occasion. Sonic and Friends, Cocos, the HUD, open zone elements like grind rails, platforms, and balloons. There's even a playlist of appropriately bouncy tunes taken from the franchise that autoplays. Some pretty deep cuts on here too. Chaotic, Sonic R, Advance, Free Riders. This is not your typical mix, and it's over half an hour. Sadly, none of these are available in the jukebox, so you'll have to wait for your favorite song if you want to hear it. Maybe they'll change that one day, who knows. The second coming of Denuvo, I see. What were added to the box were the island themes, so now you can listen to Kronos on Ares, Chaos on Rhea, etc., or if you enjoyed a certain movement over the others, that can be your main. It's a nice feature. Guardian songs still take precedent though, so keep that in mind. Oh, the music stopped. There we go. There's a new game plus that unlocks after beating the final boss, marking your save file with an emblem, letting you start a new game with all your abilities unlocked. I'll be coming back to this later since it applies to a pretty important upgrade. You can toggle the background music of cyberspace to not be distorted when boosting, so you can actually hear the soundtrack. I feel like I'm starting a Minecraft Let's Play. You can disable the dynamic camera when using skills in combat to keep your eyes focused on the action. A lot of people modded this one in before. I'm 50-50 on it. Some attacks are better off not stealing the camera angle, like Sonic Boom, Stomp, and Loop Kick. Ah, yes. But Wild Rush, for example, can be really awkward when it jerks the perspective around. These animations were all curated to have specific framings that complemented them, so when you take those away, things can get weird. Cross Slash looked really good with a close-up, but pulled back it becomes a static pose with a lot of reduced flair. Cyclone Kick and Spin Slash lack the in-your-face pizzazz that justified such a long animation, and the Titan fights are significantly less spectacular when the Grand Slam can only be seen through a telescope. You can always toggle it back on before you fight one, so it's still a good addition to have, but the rough edges still have yet to be sanded off. Wow, not even mad, I'm impressed. An unexpected change was Rhea Island's tower climbing challenges all having their difficulty reduced on easy mode, which is really just a code name for add springs everywhere. Hope you like homing attack chains, because that's the whole thing now. Just a barrage of bounce pads and balloons. I barely even touched the analog stick. Even the light speed dash at the end of the first tower has them. It's actually less automated to take that. There are moments of cool implementation where a chain of balloons functions like an alternate path, but nearly all of it is a skip button that takes away control. Confrontation is optional. I think the most baffling part was a spring that sends you into a loop of other springs. Hey, it's already automated. You take the dash pads and go through. What, that wasn't enough? You need more? You want to automate the automation? I'm gonna be sick. Hey, look, I get it. That's the point of easy mode. I'm glad they're at least making it more distinct from the other difficulties, but this is easier than some of the stuff you do earlier in the game, and is so clearly a band-aid for the unpolished mechanics. Wall climbing is almost entirely skipped over, and while that does take away most of any potential frustration, because let's be honest, it is super jank, but it also sucks out all the fun of being a climactic tower climb with a semblance of risk. For that reason, I wouldn't recommend playing this on easy. At least try it on normal first. You can always change it later. Excuse me, sir, do you have the time? But now we get into the big stuff. One of my favorite additions is the new Coco and their accompanying challenges. Completely new and original platforming segments have been added to each island, with a Coco waiting for you at the end. Oh god, I'm too late. These are meant to be extra challenging level designs that put Sonic's abilities to the test for the players who wanted something more. There are 8 per island, often taking place high up in the sky where falling is a major concern, filling the screen with obstacles that require precise timing and barely any 2D to speak of. These aren't 5-second forgettable distractions either, where all you do is homing attack and grind a rail. The designs are more elaborate and usually a bit longer. My favorite parts of the original open zone were always the ones that flung me high up anyway and had me timing my movements, so the fact that all 32 of these are basically that makes them, collectively, some of the best platforming in the entire game. Yeah, it's still a bunch of floating rails and platforms that don't have any artistic cohesion, so visually it's not an improvement, but I'm happy they're at least embracing it with better gameplay. Launching off a ramp to get within range. Sometimes you have to do a bit of searching to find a sneaky route that takes you to the underside of a waterfall. This puzzle tower in the sky where you have to hit switches had a lot of people stumped, all because you have to collect every ring that appears to make the next path open, but not once in the game have we done anything remotely similar to that, so here I was jumping around for 15 minutes ignoring the rings because I was already maxed out. When you figure that out though, it's a fun set piece. I'd say the most creative structure of them all. We don't see stuff like this. Sometimes enemies are thrown into the equation to make a necessary spring appear. A quick stepping section where jumping is disabled, so you have to participate. Unfortunately, this also emphasizes how delayed the quick stepping still is from forces. It is not a responsive tool to use, except ironically in Squid, where it's all about it. Don't you freaking dare. No! Okay, good. There's a very intricate climbing challenge with moving wall fragments and rotating spikes to cut you off, getting more intense the higher you go, but like I said back on Rhea, the climbing mechanics aren't the greatest. The big problem being this recovery animation that Sonic goes into every time you stop running. It's a detrimental inconvenience when you want to precisely stop short of a spike ball and continue once it passes. Maxed out wall running speed is pretty hard to control, so not being able to stop and go on my command feels really unintuitive for this type of stop and go objective. There are ways to save yourself if you fall, so it's not all bad. I like the setup, I just wish the control was better. Wall climbing parkour has a lot of potential, but feels like it's barely keeping itself together at times. Sir, I don't mean to alarm you, but I'm literally living rent-free in your head. Finally, we've got another tricky-to-find sky rail segment with a blue ninja inside. Well, you've got my attention. And another ramp launching sequence with a pretty crazy view. The ones on Ares are about as good. Navigating around tall chasms, doing the typical antics while avoiding nearby snipers. Glad to see those enemies get better use. My favorite was this scary midair grind where you have to carefully land on rail rings, then get past a harder version of the jellyfish with a lot more red drones. Another precise high-in-the-sky freefall where you have to land in the pink rings. These ones even move around for an added challenge. I love to see that kind of DKC barrel interaction. Free fall again into a tower full of lasers and spikes. That's not gonna make it, is it? God. Then wall run your way back up from a 2D perspective. That's a really clever use of 2D. It doesn't feel tacked on or like a budget decision. It's a way to experience the same content twice and have it feel totally different both ways. The odd one out is this cowboy Coco tucked away in a corner. It has barely any platforming leading up to it, so I guess it's more about the finding aspect. There's a section where you're grinding rails just under the canyon tops, but still over the water in a cool middle ground. It felt like a secret mission under the radar. Got some classic rotating platforms that you have to stay ahead of with plenty of shortcut opportunities using a daring boost, or a foolish one, that's always an option, and a simple but effective 2D section of spikes and light speed dashes. A lot of these felt like Unleashed DLC stages. They're kind of spammy with the assets, but remarkably investing given their simplicity. Chaos Island, though, has some of my favorite segments. There's this really fun secret agent laser grid pathway that's a blast to take shortcuts in. Depth perception can be unclear, but I didn't find it too problematic. There's another exciting stretch where you can either wall run at a safe pace or continue rail jumping for a seamless ride if you can handle it, which I think is a nice dichotomy. Rewarding skill with a faster time is always nice to see. These signs have rotating spikes around them, so you can't go too fast or too slow when side looping them. You kind of have to wiggle around to manage the space. It's interesting. It made me think about how I was side looping in a way that I never had before. Then we get a bunch of spike pillars hiding switches that require very careful navigation. I don't mind when Sonic slows down like this every now and then because the danger is so high and I can always whip out a time-saving air boost if I have the confidence. This next one was super fun. It plays with a lot of airborne freedom, letting you soar over gaps, light dashes to keep the pace up, skinny geometry to scare you, and since the whole island takes place above the clouds, it amplifies that tension of being really high up. More spike jumps and hopping around laser fields, throwing in some city escape poles, jumping and moving hoops to get across again, although this one was a bit too short if you ask me. By the grace of a pebble, you can Chaos Island your way up the whole thing too. Same with this one here, I could have played a full course without getting bored. To me, this is wall running done right. Mid-air thrills, picking lanes, getting out in the nick of time, it's fast and exciting. I definitely want to see more of this. The last one was kind of weird though. It felt like the most regular of them all. If it weren't for the minefield of spikes, I would have mistaken this for a normal memory token challenge. Finally, we have Uranus, and it goes crazy right off the bat. I love it. More extravagant wall running with a lot of open space so you can save yourself if you get too reckless. It's great. I love getting to climb walls of my own volition without it breaking. Dangerous rail grinding with fans to boost you up, getting pretty pretty tight later on, it was a good exercise in control and balance, once again playing into the fear of heights. Next, we have a great 2D section. Yeah, I know, crazy, right? It's too bad the collision took another sick day, but for real, I have a lot of fun here. I'm always down for a tower climb. Air boosting is effective for shortcuts, you're not just holding a direction the whole time, and we get that cool perspective shift of going inside the very thing we were climbing. This next one though, oh baby. Long moving hallways that get cut off by walls, so you gotta go through quick. Smaller moving squares that can be boosted over with an exhilarating leap. The stakes get higher as you do, less terrain to walk on, more squares going upwards, you can't skip them. Even if you fall, it's exciting to recover. Then we get our Mortar Canyon moment where we can skip over it, and it just feels so right. This one's more focused on timing, with pole jumps and zip lines on and off of wall running, a fun combination that we don't see often. Probably for a reason. More wall running, but this time it's about getting into the right spot, broken up by some quick rail grinding dodges. Then they decided to blow my mind by bringing back the Rooftop Run Act 2 Balloon Homing Attack Challenge, where you have to fall within range to fly back up, and expanded upon it. This was beyond exciting for me. I always thought it had potential to give greater consideration to when and how Sonic's homing attack could be used, and while it's still a short section that doesn't fully delve into that potential, I was satisfied with the interpretation. And then we end it with another Bridge the Gap freefall, dodging springs on the way down, only to grind back up Rhea Island style. These are all really fun, but if I had to pick one, Uranos is definitely my favorite island when it comes to these challenges, and I'm so glad they were added. There are two benefits to collecting these new Coco. One is that some of these are worth a lot more than a single Coco. Some can be up to 30, which makes maxing out your speed and ring capacity a lot more doable without resorting to big. These guys are so cuddly too, just look at them. We got a king, queen, crown, cowboy, ninja, pirate, yeah take that, a Zorro look-alike, and a swordsman with Caliburn on his back. The references are coming to life, ladies and gentlemen. Returning the village leader, previous elder, and king to the Elder Coco will give you 1 extra boost gauge. And you do this on every island, totaling to 4 additional gauges. You will never run out. It's just not gonna happen. To be honest though, I was never gonna run out beforehand anyway, so this is kind of a disposable upgrade, more of a convenience than a necessity. Further compounded by the infinity sign you could already make for infinite boost as well, so it's not the most unique. Something more platforming focused would have been cool, like a triple jump. That would make a new playthrough fun to tackle. I'd just like to know why. The other big addition is the Action Chain Challenge. Psyloop 1 of 10 signposts per island, and the countdown begins for you to score as many points as you can before the timer runs out. What gives you points? Everything. Springs, dash pads, wall running, wall jumping, rail grinding, tricks, boosting, combat. Every action yields a bonus, alongside a score multiplier that you can max out really quick by collecting orbs, and so long as you keep doing things, it won't drain back down, assuming the game doesn't randomly decide to mess up. In particular, defeating big groups of weak enemies yield the most points, and 2D sections tend to be far more lucrative since they have more stuff in them, which will no doubt make you appreciate Chaos Island a lot more. Maybe. I'm glad that they finally added some kind of a score attack to this game. It feels a bit more involved than the other modes and gives a motivation to play well in the open zone. However, it is still very basic at the end of the day. Just pick a direction and pray that you get enough points. If not, pick a new one and take notes on where the jackpots are. It's not about pulling off a bunch of crazy tricks via skill, since these courses aren't very intricate to begin with. It's finding the right area with the most stuff in it and playing it somewhat quick. It's like a scavenger hunt with a time limit. When you lose, it wasn't because it was hard, you just didn't find the right spot yet. Or yeah, the game flips you off, I don't know. This is where the homogeneous world design can start to backfire, because it's hard to recognize where the best bits of level are when everything is using the same assets, popping in and out no less. You're not intuiting where to go, you're just getting lucky as you rediscover the island. Signs can be pretty close to each other too, so I often found myself going back to the same areas on multiple challenges for the reliability, leading to even more repetition. And similar to Battle Rush, the offhand glitch and collision mishap can make or break a successful attempt, and therefore your spirit. Consistently psylooping the target I'm not facing had never been so infuriating. It needs a manual lock-on if it's going to behave like this. Ensnaring a big group of soldiers and hello, Mr. Log. One time a zipline didn't send me far enough, so I dropped dead. Well, eventually. The backwards rail switching, though, I have no idea what this is. It barely happens in the whole game, but it's the same places every time. It's like the modern equivalent of getting rail canyoned. This is when I also found out that you can't homing attack after a stomp bounce. You can't even punch, the whole button is disabled. Add it to the list of weird control things, I guess. Overall, Action Chain is decent. Not terribly interesting to me, but there is a satisfaction in figuring it out. If you're really struggling with it, you can set the difficulty back to easy, lowering the point requirements, and while that's not a practice I would normally advocate for, getting an S rank on all 40 challenges will unlock the Spin Dash. And this is 100% worth your time. Incredible. When I heard about the Spin Dash coming to Frontiers, I didn't know what to be excited about. On paper, it should be functionally identical to a boost, a sudden burst of speed that propels you forward, only now you're in a ball. Nothing changes. So what could they have possibly done to make it better? Oh. Yes. Yes! Allow me to eat my words real quick. How do you make the Spin Dash better than boost? Give it its own physical properties. Brilliant. Aside from pushing you forward at the same speed as a power boost, spin dashing off of a hill or any incline will send you. No jumping required. You can even charge it midair like a drop dash and go through enemies. Lower the new setting they added for jump deceleration to extend your time in the air and watch the world become yours. Fly on over to night. You can do it now. Behold, as I make this Titan disappear. Every island is packed with opportunities to go airborne, taking shortcuts, grabbing memory tokens without needing to go through the entire obstacle course, getting to areas ahead of time that would normally require some prior task, or just having fun, feeling the rush of blasting away. Even some of the new Coco challenges have bombastic workarounds. Look at this, I can skip right to it. This is the definition of a game changer. That's no hyperbole. Everything is different now. Not even rail launching could let you tackle the environment in this way, and those were situational utilities. This is in your back pocket at all times. And despite the game not being built with a spin dash in mind, it has a remarkable amount of application. Some areas are a little finicky due to this. You'll have to experiment with what angle and terrain is best because sometimes it just doesn't work, but man, it usually does. And when it does, you feel like you just enabled a cheat code, and not the game-breaking kind where all the fun is taken away. You've opened a door of destiny, soaring high over the path of mortal man, using your own curiosity to guide you. Now, let's head to that crater. The boost isn't rendered obsolete either, by the way. You still use it on rails, squid segments, and when you actually want to stay on the ground, not flying off. Chaos Island may have a few choice words for you, but the need is still there. It didn't feel like a total replacement. Speaking of Chaos Island, though, what a transformation. If you hated this place before because of too much 2D and awkward terrain, the Spin Dash will completely change your mind. The curvaceous, bumpy texture is its greatest strength now. Everything is a skate ramp for you to become one with the eagles. And if you hold the boost down while letting go of the Spin Dash button, you'll enter the trick animation, giving you even more distance for maximum range. I was able to land on Fortress, something I could have only dreamed of before. Where'd he go? Some of the adjacent islands that used to require rail transportation to reach are now next door neighbors. Ring the bell, we got Sanka. Like, check this out. Oh, no, get me out of here. Look at how effortlessly I'm able to reach this once upon a time out of the way location. I'm like a beast in repose. It's beautiful. Memory tokens suspended in the air after a lengthy course are sitting ducks if you get the right angle. Don't feel like riding all that spaghetti for a single wrench? We have technology. Navigating these islands, getting from one task to another, feels great. And it did before, but you could tell there was restraint behind the wheel, begging to be cut loose. Now it has. A completely new lens to view the gameplay from has been uncovered that both inspires and rewards creativity without just being a win button. Every token was an opportunity to critically think about how to grab it using an alternate method. Yeah, some were easy, but others not so much. It was a spectrum of solutions that proved continually satisfying to figure out. Now, it does share the same button as Sonic Boom, so there was one instance where I somehow attacked a pole on accident. It's like you had to let some aggression out before continuing, but aside from that, I had no configuration problems. The only drawback to this ability is that you have to unlock it. And that can only happen at the end of your playthrough when you get to Uranus and have access to the final 10 challenges. So you have to play through the whole game at least once without it, which may sound like too little too late, but I'm actually going to play devil's advocate here and say that this was kind of a smart move. It guarantees that players will experience the game normally one time, not skipping too much content, and then have a major incentive to play it again, this time getting a direct comparison for how powerful the Spin Dash is. Because sometimes you need that before and after perspective to appreciate how good a change is, and you definitely get that here. Would it have been better if you had it from the very beginning or in the skill tree? Probably. There's certainly an argument for that, but I think there's merit in how they went about it too. Besides, something you can enable from the beginning is another new menu option to have your boost carry over into a jump. Let me repeat that. Boosting carries into your jump now. The single biggest, unanimous criticism towards the control in this game was that jumping killed your speed. And it's gone. Half the reason why the spin dash is so good is that it flings you at top speed, maintaining a flow. Being able to do this in general movement is just as impactful as what the spin dash can do. No, you can't take to the skies in the same way, and there are still random parts of terrain that don't carry momentum for some reason, but you can cover a lot of distance and still feel like the world is your oyster. And when you have both of these at your disposal, you're an unstoppable force. Not just for the open zone, by the way. These features apply to cyberspace as well. They even added 3 new asterisks at the results screen. That's how you know it's good. Any moments that required a homing dash to feel a semblance of speed don't anymore. 3D sections have been fixed. 3-3 might be my favorite level now, all because jumping doesn't break the pace. 3-5, the most hated stage by a majority of people, isn't just better. It's actually fun. I enjoy the movement, still skipping the drift pads, of course. And when you throw the spin dash into the equation, even more shenanigans open up. Now, most levels don't see an improvement to that degree. Rail-heavy ones like 2-6 and 4-4 don't have you on the ground very much anyway to use it. 4-8 is too brief for any major tricks to unfold. 4-9 barely has you controlling regular Sonic, and the common hallway structure doesn't always allow for freedom, but the biggest control issue has still been addressed, improving universal pacing across frontiers, and that's a big deal. For 3D anyway. 2D is sadly still a massive slog, and that's because boosting never made you go any faster here. It was the same speed with or without, so having the boost carry into a jump changes nothing. I've been continually baffled by this. We're already slowed down so much in 2D. The fact that boosting, not even power boosting, makes you go any faster is what drives me to buy so many weapons. Thankfully, the spin dash can help since it doesn't have a speed reduction, so you will fly through linear segments that used to be a crawl. The intro to 1-6 being the greatest example. Loop-de-loops feel so much closer to how they should. The ending of 2-7 flows way better, and ramps launch you at a comical height, really showing off how unprepared these level designs were for such a power-up, but it's the fun kind of broken that doesn't unravel the point of playing. Which is why 3-4 has inherited the Copper Crown as my least favorite level. With no spin dash usable on rails, there's nothing redeeming about how I feel playing this. Get me out of here, I can feel it spreading. And even when you can spin dash, as soon as you jump, you're reset to that mediocre default speed, so fingers crossed that they can somehow bump it up in the final update. Weirdly enough, there are 2 2D sections in the whole game where an air boost will push you forward the same distance as if you were in 3D. The spiral climb on Chaos Island, and the squid chase with Night. These must be programmed differently because nothing about this constant hot and cold speed feels intentional. I caught up to squid by mashing it, a sight I never thought I'd see. The timing of the buzzsaw got thrown off, ending my career in an instant. Boosting on rails is also the same speed as in 3D for some reason. Most importantly, the whole section was a lot faster and more fun because of it, proving that a higher speed is integral to this gameplay style. Now, finish the job. And that's why I'm so grateful that the spin dash lets me bypass as much 2D as it does. Its effectiveness cannot be overstated. My one and only gripe is how you have to unlock it every time you start a new game. The only way to have the spin dash in a new file from the beginning is via New Game Plus. But that also carries all of your stats over, meaning if you're maxed out, you're gonna crush that early and mid-game competition into pieces. Maybe you want that, maybe you don't. Being overpowered is only fun for so long. Most New Game Plus campaigns treat it like a secondary hard mode, upping the ante with more difficult enemies, obstacles, etc., but in Frontiers, it's the same exact game again. And that would be fine if it didn't cut down on so much content. Being maxed out from the get-go without any adjustments removes all sense of item progression and what little challenge there was to begin with. Titan fights go down in a flash, editing down the music and therefore the appeal. Seeds of power and defense from completing mission objectives and exploring the open zone are meaningless, as are the Cocos, nullifying any reason to play the new challenges, which as I said are one of my favorite parts of the game now, so that's a bummer. Skill points don't have a use, so killing grunt enemies don't serve you in any way. It's like we're back in extreme mode where memory tokens and vault keys are all that matter, minus the extreme part. It still makes you play the tutorial, by the way. Every pop-up, camera pan, and voiceover is forced upon you yet again. It re-unlocks the side loop even though you already have it. Look, I get it, making games is hard, but geez, look at how many menus I'm bombarded with at the end of it. No further comments. The only way I can have my cake and eat it is by playing through the game yet again, this time staying at level 1, recompleting all 40 action chains, and use that as my New Game Plus basis. Thankfully, I have a couple level 1 files already, but I really think the spin dash should be permanently unlocked once you have it. Or at the very least, give us the option to customize our stats when selecting New Game Plus, assuming we've already maxed everything out. The sound memories behave the same way. You have to collect them every time, so you never get to play the game beginning to end with a full playlist. Frontiers isn't the kind of game where I spend a lot of time running around after I've beaten it, so it feels counterintuitive to restrict it this way. The only post-game content I did fully indulge in was 100% completion. Beat every Guardian around 2 times, I think. It's kind of vague. Clear every cyberspace mission, fish out the entire pond, watch every side character cutscene, S-rank the action chains, collect the new Coco, and grab every single memory token. Yeah, that one took a while. I really wish there was a way to mark all tokens on the map at once because I had to go back into the menu to place a new one every time, and that added up quick. A lot of these are really well hidden, so going after them all helped me discover parts of the game I had never seen before, which I appreciated, but I was definitely motivated by that 100% reward the most. For completing everything in Sonic Frontiers, you get... It's a crown. Cyberspace Challenge gave the power boost, Battle Rush Extreme Mode, Action Chain got us the freaking spin dash. But 100%ing the entire game gives an accessory cosmetic that you won't even see half the time because you'll be curled in a ball. Like, cool, I get to cosplay as Final Mix Sora, but it's a pretty weak reward in comparison, wouldn't you say? How about letting us wield Caliburn? The game's already part hack and slash, and he's in the code now. He would fit right in. Add a couple new attack animations and boom, golden. Speaking of, an Excalibur Sonic costume would be incredible too. Super Sonic maybe, where you can free roam. Imagine if the islands were all connected on the same map and you could fly to each one without loading zones. There's a lot of potential here for something more worth your time. But fantasies aside, this secondary update to Frontiers isn't just a step up from the first. It redefines a huge portion of the gameplay for the better. It feels great to run around now, making the hiccups in collision and presentation far more negligible. I don't know what was going on there. Do yourself a favor, enable boost while jumping, and get the spin dash as soon as possible. You will have no regrets. If that final update pulls through, filling in the story gaps, adding fun extra characters, and reshaping the ending for a satisfying conclusion, I will be so proud and happy. I already am, to be fair. Huge kudos to Sonic Team for taking feedback amongst all the incoherent screaming and making changes that considerably improve the product for everyone. But if they stick that landing, it's on. Until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, don't forget to check out the next episode whenever I post it, which will probably be soon. Alright. See ya.